I just had an incredible conversation with Teri Patterson. She shared her personal, powerful journey from wellness enthusiast, which she will elaborate on what that meant to her, to a functional nutritionist, highlighting the profound impact of removing alcohol for optimal gut health and overall well-being. We explored the surprising benefits of sobriety, from better digestion to increased energy and focus. Preaching to the choir, you all know. You really don't want to miss all of her tips for holistic health and her inspiring path to creating the Sober Hive, an empowering community for sober entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Wellness as a Way of Life, the less is more source of wellness, knowledge, wisdom, and inspiration for modern women and female founders. Here we teach you why not all wellness trends are for you, how to figure out which ones are, and how to best adapt them for your personal wellness toolbox. I'm your host, Megan Swan, with more than a decade of experience in the wellness industry and on my own personal journey. I will teach you how to tune into and trust your intuition and drown out all the noise. I love to support female founders in the process of building their business to strategically optimize their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. I have helped hundreds of women establish wellness as a way of life with my less is more approach. Join me on my mission to make wellness a way of life. Let's dive in. Hi, Teri. Welcome to the podcast. I'm thrilled to have you here today. How are you?
I am doing so well, Megan. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love how you focus on functional nutrition, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey to where you are today in terms of focusing on this intersection of sobriety and nutrition.
Yes, so for me, what happened was I was someone, before I stopped drinking, I would classify myself as a wellness enthusiast.
Yes.
So I was excited to explore all things related to wellness. I, always had an interest in things like what should I be drinking and eating and what type of movement is coming up and a little bit of the biohacking. So we're talking like, 2000 to 2015. And so there wasn't as much biohacking out there, but things like turning your shower cold at the end of the shower. All of these things were fascinating to me, but I never equated not drinking as a form of wellness. I thought that alcohol was just part of, choose better drinks, choose low sulfite wine, choose alcohol with less sugar. I never thought about taking alcohol out as part of my wellness journey. And so when I stopped drinking, I looked around and thought, well, what can I focus on now? What do I want to put my time and attention on? Because I found I had a lot of extra time and attention. And so I thought, I'm going to go to nutrition school. And the interesting part, kind of an aha moment or a tongue-in-cheek moment, was I thought, these will be my people. No one will be drinking alcohol. And of course, as we know, the wellness world is making progress, but in 2015, that really wasn't the case.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of a very common, double thing that most wellness enthusiasts, as you say, it's the very last thing. It's sure that was my experience that I was willing to consider might be having a negative impact on, my sleep, my mood, my ability to build muscle, recover, be a patient, loving mother, all these things. Like I optimized everything before I would even consider that was something that might be better off the table.
Yes, and I don't know that I expected the results that I got when I stopped drinking. I was aware that for alcohol, for me, it had become a place of tension because it was taking up a lot of mental space. I was, negotiating with myself a lot, trying to do a lot of moderation. And those were the things I really knew I wanted to change. Like I started to feel like I was miserable drinking. And so I thought, well, why am I choosing to be miserable? And so I think for me, the beautiful opening in my journey was, wow, now I want to focus on feeling healthier. Like I'm loving my life again. And how do I get more of this? How do I increase my longevity, my overall health, my energy, all of that? And so that sort of came after because I wasn't even exploring. I just stopped drinking because I realized it was time. And I wasn't even yet understanding all the benefits.
Yeah. So I'd love if we really focus on, what is the specific interaction of alcohol? And I'm sure, a lot of women are immediately going to say, wine is good for you. There's all these benefits. But how is alcohol affecting your gut health specifically?
Yes, so I think the number one thing for people to realize that we don't necessarily hear about is that alcohol impacts your metabolism. So we prioritize the metabolizing of alcohol because it is toxic once we ingest it. Our body says, hey, we got to get rid of this poison. And so we are going to stop digesting food. We're going to stop prioritizing other things like moving those neuro chemicals, or that I want to say I can't think of the term.
But it's like the more, deeper level healing or sort of cleaning or maintenance in the system, right?
Yeah, I mean, alcohol impacts every system. So, we think the gut's going to create these feel-good neurotransmitters, and that's what I wanted to say, neurotransmitters, and we're going to uptake them to the brain. And then instead, it's got to prioritize getting rid of alcohol. So we stop metabolizing food, which means food is hanging around in our system longer. So, for an example, I used to think that, well, when I eat rich food, I just have trouble digesting rich food. Like I can't eat a large meal, or I can't eat a lot of dairy, or I can't have a celebratory meal that's kind of decadent and then have dessert because I'll get sick. Well, what was happening really metabolically was my body was saying, okay, that food, I don't care what happens to the food or the gut, we're just going to get rid of the alcohol. So that food hanging around was creating gut dysbiosis. It was creating indigestion sometimes, acid reflux. The body is designed to process our food fairly quickly. And when it gets hung up and it's just hanging around in the gut, that's when we start to get the impact of undigested food. And then downline from that, what happens is now we're not utilizing those nutrients. The opportunity to use those nutrients for them to be taken up to the systems in our body, to go through our bloodstream, to nourish our brain, our organs, our circulatory system, everything. We miss some of that opportunity because we're not digesting food in the way that we're supposed to. And this is a big part of our overall nutrition. It's part of why when we stop drinking alcohol, or when we're drinking and over drinking, we are depleted of certain nutrients because our body hasn't had the opportunity to break them down in the form of food and utilize them the way they're supposed to.
So what were some of the things that you personally noticed in terms of your digestion optimizing as you dropped alcohol out of the equation?
Yeah, so the first thing was really like, oh my gosh, it's not the food that I'm eating. I am actually enjoying food. I feel good and energized after I eat. I'm not having nearly as many bowel issues. I was one of those people. I don't know how graphic you want to get, but as a nutritionist, I talk about poop. So, I was one of those people that was constantly in the state of diarrhea, constipation, diarrhea, constipation. And that alone is a clue that you're not digesting optimally. And so I didn't really understand the mechanisms or what was happening, but what I noticed right away was something is very different. And, that's just the gut. But then we think about the impact of sleep and immune system and energy level. All of that is affected when we're drinking and can change very rapidly when we remove alcohol.
Yeah, I think that's like a really big surprise for most people, is the shift in energy. And of course, it's kind of, twofold. You're sleeping better, well, threefold. You're absorbing nutrients better. You're probably making better decisions on what you're consuming and the hour of the day and all these things that are helping you digest and sleep and rest better. But I love that you talked at the beginning kind of about the ruminating and the time saved. So what did you do with all of your new time besides, get certified as a coach?
Yeah, well, that was, the first thing I did was within 3 months of not drinking alcohol, I had so much time and energy that I literally was sort of like a spinning top. Like, what now? What now? And I had always, as I mentioned, had sort of this love affair with wellness and health. And I worked with a network marketing company where they had like supplements. And so I was helping people take a break and remove sugar and focus on, their overall health, and even remove alcohol for 30 days. I can remember, Megan, when I was drinking, I used to look at my calendar and think, when can I offer this 30-day break? Because, I have a graduation, or I have a wedding, or I have a vacation. And I didn't even realize at the time that I was really, instead of, my life was being run by alcohol, and I didn't even notice it because I was on a wellness journey. And so when I stopped drinking, I looked around kind of and I thought, gosh, what are my opportunities here? Where do I want to put this excess time and energy? And I now understand that one of the keys to lasting change is to have something you're looking forward to, and build in some anticipation. And so the universe delivered to me on the front page of our small town newspaper a beautiful opportunity. I opened up, it was January, the first week of January. I opened up the paper. There was a woman in my town who was opening a little nutrition shop, and she was going to be helping people with nutrition. And I started reading the article, and I focused on, where did she go to school? And so I called her up and I said, I'm really interested in what is the Nutritional Therapy Association. Can you tell me more? And she became my mentor, and she was very generous with her time. I ended up renting office space from her, but it was as if I literally opened the paper and there it was in black and white. Do this next.
Yeah.
And so I did. And what was so lovely about that was it gave me such a positive focus. And I was learning, I was growing, I was seeing that alcohol had kept me playing really small. And now I had the opportunity to dive into something that I had never, I would like, wasn't a long-term plan to go to nutrition school, but it was something that not only benefited me, but I could see it as an opportunity to kind of give back and to move into a place of a new way of, having a career and sharing my knowledge. And I knew there was something in there around alcohol that I wanted to share.
Yeah. We have such similar, histories here. I did the 21-day detox, sugar detoxes, which of course includes alcohol, for a long time. That was one of my first things too. And also, booking them around my life. Too funny. So I think, and we also share that, I funneled my energy into getting certified as a health coach, running and building businesses. So I'd love for you to talk about, for me, it was just so much confidence that, not immediately, but it built up over the years to have a bigger and bigger vision of what was possible for myself. And I know that you're, pulling entrepreneurs together around this sobriety thread.
Yeah, so the first thing that kind of happened for me, and it's funny when I look back, it took me a while before I put the dots together, connected the dots. But when I was in nutrition school, one of the things we had to do is we had to do a community project. And we had like months to do it. And I was like, I think the first person that did it, because I was like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to get this out of the way. And what I decided to do was I decided to create a presentation for a recovery group about what we could do to use nutrition to support our alcohol-free journey. Now, in 2015, that wasn't really a thing, or
No.
2016, I should say. It wasn't really a thing. Like a lot of people weren't really doing that. The groups that I approached were like, wow, we've never thought about how to use nutrition. Typically they were still doing donuts and coffee, as a way to manage the withdrawals from alcohol. And so when I look back on that, I realized that early on, that was something I knew was key. And yet I didn't really have the skills to talk to my clients about alcohol. And so that's when I decided I am going to get a secondary certification as an alcohol freedom coach. And that's when my entrepreneurial journey really started to open up. And I think when I look back on it, when I went to nutrition school, a lot of the people were there because they'd had their own healing journey. And my healing journey wasn't like, oh, I had an autoimmune disease and I used nutrition to recover, or I had a cancer scare and I changed my eating habits and my, lifestyle, and I have better, more complete wellness now. What it was for me was it was this alcohol journey. And so when I started sharing that story, and when I started helping people move toward letting go of alcohol by using nutrition and focusing on what I call true wellness, that's when my business just took off, because I think I was sharing my authentic story. I had more passion, and there was just more behind the story, because anybody can train as a health coach, which is great. But when you have your own story, then you're connecting with people in a very real and vulnerable way, and they see themselves in your story.
Yeah. And I think honestly, for most people going to these programs, it's kind of a personal unraveling first. Like, I don't remember where I read, but I have a bachelor's in psychology, and most people who go into psychology, it's like really they just want to understand themselves better. Some of them go on to get a PhD and actually help others. But I think in these coaching programs, you learn a lot about yourself that you didn't anticipate learning, and it all becomes different pieces of your journey, or different, I don't know, chapters or types of people that you can therefore go on to help, because not everyone has the same exact journey, but there's definitely some similarities, like in ours here. So what are you doing currently in the realm of sober entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I'm somebody who likes to keep growing and offering new things in my business. I find it very exciting, and there's a lot to offer. And so, as you mentioned, Megan, as I grow as an entrepreneur, I feel like, ooh, now I want to talk to women more about midlife. Ooh, and now I want to talk to women about this or that, and so very fairly quickly for me, a lot of my focus became on how do I reach women who are already alcohol free and are recognizing, like I did, wow, everything is opening up. And so I have programs. My signature program called the Self Experience is something that addresses women in this, now what's next phase, which is really so much fun because they can be on all kinds of, paths to their own evolution. And yet the intersection, the starting point, the connection is letting go of alcohol and embracing more. So that's been so much fun. And then I do other little small things like little one-off book studies, because I'm always learning and growing. And I think if I'm reading a book and it means something to me, what if I share it with my audience and we get, collectively more engagement, more understanding, we get more out of the book, more, our learning goes deeper. And then recently I started a collaboration with a new friend, Maggie Classens, and we're actually offering a community experience for entrepreneurs in the alcohol-free space. So women like you, anyone who is a podcaster, an author, an experience leader, a coach who serves this alcohol-free community in this sober space. We said, gosh, where are all the people gathered together sharing the best ideas and connecting and growing and supporting one another? And there really wasn't the space that we felt would benefit us. And so we created the Sober Hive.
Yeah. And I'd love, like, what's the inspiration for the name? Because I think it's brilliant.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I think I will take credit for coming up with it. But we kind of talked about some different name ideas, and I really liked the hive because if you look at a beehive, there's a certain makeup of the hive, and it is really focused on collaboration, connection, community, support. So that to us really spoke to what we wanted to create.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'm also not afraid of the name sober. Some people, don't want to use the term sober in their business offers. And to me, I have the philosophy that let's make sober sexy. Let's take it back. Instead of saying like sober is somber and who wants to be sober? That's no fun. Let's say, gosh, there's a new way of looking at sober.
I like that. I think you maybe have just given me the little push. I'm in the moment of deciding what exact term I might be using for a new offer. And yeah, I like that a lot. The taking an empowering look and redefining. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. Is there any sort of parting thought you want to leave us with?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing always for me comes back to curiosity. So, what I've found in my own life and in much of my work is that when we lead with curiosity, we suspend judgment. So when we are in a place of exploring our own relationship with alcohol and its impact on our wellness, I think it's so powerful to just say, gosh, what can I learn? What am I noticing? Rather than drinking is bad or, oh, here I go again. And we can suspend that judgment and open a whole new chapter of just, exploring what could be different and what life might look like. And I know for you and I, Megan, it looks very different than it used to.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. So apropos. Well, we'll leave it there and we'll share all of the links to all the ways that people can connect with you and work with you in the show notes, and we'll be in touch.
I so appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Teri. Hey there. One last thing I wanted to share with you. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you could rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. It really does help us grow the show, and this being so important to me to get this message out to more women to help them optimize their wellness and ultimately their lives. This is my mission, and I would greatly appreciate it if you could support the podcast by rating and reviewing. Thanks in advance. Have a good one.